listeners, I ask of you to close your eyes and imagine with me for a moment. Imagine a world where both the magical and mundane coexist in a post-industrial boom, swinging to the roaring rhythm of big brass bandstands and even bigger businesses. Imagine a world where most of its residents live in giant stateside cities that protect them from the harsh outsides in their own isolated and self-sustaining biospherical walls, made from the hollow corpses of deities long expired. Imagine a world where the blood of those old gods is fuel for the new machines, where magic is constantly on the cusp of arcane advancements and being pushed further and further and further along the limits of what it means to cast a spell. An elite organization known as the Bureau of Occultic Observations stands ready and willing to bear their fangs against these threats and where their malice resides. Hello everyone. It has certainly been a while, hasn't it? But I come with great joy and I'm here to tell you, we're back, baby. Well, that was something, to be sure. First and foremost, let me get more of everything situated, and is I, your hostess with the mostest, and your sadistic maniac, KingDapprWombat. And once again, I'm here to tell everybody, well, welcome to my second ever stream. I am pretty anxious, still also fairly excited about all of this, and just kind of want to take a second to say once again for everything, thank you so much for, I'm sorry, let me move this. For everybody, thank you for showing up. Thank you for, listening in, following along, and just kind of staying up to date with everything. I know that I have been kind of busy with everything as of late, as well as just trying to deal with, just kind of life and happenstance that sort of happens. So, without further ado, I'm going to kind of get into the arrangement for how today's stream is going to work. So, I am going to give a bit of a backstory for myself again, for those who are coming in, as well as I'm going to run down a couple of new updates and exciting new things that are going on with the with Tales of Adventure as a whole. And then, last but not least, for the final hour, as I usually do, I am going to give that up to I'm going to essentially give that up to reveal the the Pactkeeper class that we did for Zeravanchans. So, with all of that being said, I'm going to just jump right into it. So, for those who may or may not be aware, once again, my name is KingDapprWombat, he, him, and I am the Dungeon Master and the showrunner for the Tales of Adventure Agents of B.O.O podcast. I've been running this and I've been doing this for about 3 years now, and the current run of the Agents of B.O.O podcast is my third rendition, or I suppose I should say the third try. And what ended up happening is that this one seemed to have kind of stuck the most, and so we are able to kind of go along with everything else that has been happening. It's been a fantastic time. It's been really wonderful to get everybody on board, and nice to know that everybody on the team is super excited to work and just kind of play with everybody, so that's also really awesome. I couldn't ask for a better team. And I've learned so many more new things. I've learned and had so many more new opportunities with everything, chances to grow, being on other people's streams and everything like that. And it's just been such an amazing opportunity to say the least. A little bit more about me, and I'm not going to kind of get into it here, but as of 2018, I was diagnosed with Rosai-Dorfman disease, and that left me not only having to relearn how to walk for about a year of my life, but also I had to have chemotherapy and excessive spine surgery to get the tumor that was left in my spine removed. So during that time period, I really harkened down and kind of really doubled into playing TTRPGs and just wanting to get more into this space. And either by listening with Critical Role or by listening with the Adventure Zone or NADPod, I finally decided, I'm going to exist within this space. And even with that, I wanted to exist within the space because I knew, at the very least, that when I was getting into this, I didn't really see a whole lot of like queer or people of color in this space. And so I wanted to essentially use myself as a launch pad that hopefully getting far enough along, if I can make a career out of this, I would be able to jump up and essentially make this another comfortable place for people to live and experience in. So, with all of that out of the way, I have a good new couple of updates because it's certainly been at the very least about like 9 weeks. As of this time, I am currently in between jobs, I should say. And so I'm currently kind of looking for new ones and kind of wanting to explore more within this space. So I have had a lot more time to work on our live streaming stuff, to work on just overall managing upkeep for the podcast in its entirety. So what I mean by that is, well, now you can see that we have a couple new fancy bells and whistles. You can see up on there we go. Perfect. Right there. I keep forgetting the camera's mirrored. Right up here. Boom. You can see that we now have officially a new logo for Tales of Adventure. As we, as a team, decided it would be kind of a nice step to get more developed with what we're doing here, and especially since we're wanting to take this more seriously. As well as you have clearly probably seen either on our social medias or on our TikToks that we do, in fact, have another TikTok that now I kind of have fun and post videos, not only kind of giving my 2 cents and giving DM advice, but also just kind of giving shout outs and other stuff such as this. So all of that being said, it has been a phenomenal time. Because not only that, have I also been able to basically star on other people's shows and other people's podcasts. And that has been truly a blessing. And now with this part of my life, I'm deciding to kind of take this to the next level. So starting in the next couple of weeks, I will actually be putting out my link to my startplaying.games. And for those of you that aren't really aware, startplaying.games is a website in which you can either join as a player or join as a DM, where you can meet up with different people and play different tabletops. Obviously, this would be more of like a paid player experience, but GMs who are looking to make a little bit more money or wanting to get themselves more out there, they're able to set up these tables, set up these adventures, put in how long the campaign is going to be, and set a price line for how long or how much this is essentially going to be for that. So I am deciding, and more than anything, I'm probably going to start doing this, especially since I'm kind of in between the jobs, and well, paying for health insurance out of pocket is something that's never not fun. And I kind of, unfortunately, within the late stage capitalistic health state, I kind of need money to live. But that, with all of that being said, I also wanted to let everybody know that this, in fact, also, with some other great news, is in fact sponsored by Derf Dice. Now, I'll kind of get into it a little bit more as I sort of talk with this, but Derf Dice is an online tool that you can sign up for at derfdice.com. and it essentially helps not only for dungeon masters to put together tables for whatever is for taverns, for dungeons, for loot, and essentially has an outcome for when you want to roll them. So instead of trying to put together the loot tables or anything that your characters might find in a Dragon's Hoard, or, oh, wait, I really need to figure out what this tavern is going to look like, or like what is going to be inside the contents of this tavern, instead of trying to figure all of that in your head, you just let Derf Dice do it. It's fun, it's highly customizable, and I know for the future of the podcast, I will be using this, and though I'll be kind of giving shout outs for that on our social medias, and just kind of having on our TikToks. I'll be now starting a new series called Wombat's World Building Wednesday, where I'll essentially take that premise, I will put it on our TikTok, I'll kind of have a list of stuff, and I will try and world build and create something from it. So that'll be a fun experience, and especially since I'm learning so many new things with how all of this works, is it just going to be a pretty great time. So I just wanted to let them know and just kind of give a shout out to the folks at Derf Dice. So thank you once again for sponsorships for the podcast. Hope to keep kind of going strong. With all of that out of the way, I'm trying to debate, or I guess rather figure out how I want to do this next part, because we already got the sponsorship, we already got all of that stuff. Well, I think then, in this instance, just kind of giving a couple more behind the scenes with what's going on with Agents of B.O.O. So once again, you already saw that we have now our TikTok, and we are now trying to be more full in force with social media, with myself trying to kind of push a little bit more of that effort. We have also come up and we now have some new merch in our shop, and that I will kind of show right here and now, because I have one wonderful example. So I do not know if any of you all have been able to look at our Ko-fi or our Etsy shop, but we have these beauties in our shop now. So these are our wonderful laser engraved dice towers. These we are essentially, not only are we giving those away out as giveaways for our social media, especially for our Twitter, but we also have these on sale on our Ko-fi as well as our Etsy shop for about a total of $35, which includes the shipping. Now, these little buggers are absolutely amazing. As you can tell, it comes in two parts. It comes in both the dice tower part, where you actually insert the die at the top and you roll with it, and it comes out on the bottom here. But also, it has this lovely little tower / slit base that you put it in. So it doesn't come fully assembled. There's sometimes it will come with the pieces, but we'll try to make sure that we have them fully assembled as possible. But once it's fully assembled, they stack just like this and fit in nice and neatly in a nice little container. But anytime you want to use it, all you do is just simply take the top part here and flip it up, and it's ready to go. And then you're ready to toss your dice, as I am going to do right now. I'm going to take out my very pretty set here, and I am going to toss my D20 gemstone die in here. So, goes in through the top, feeds out to the bottom, and you can all see, as this thing almost falls, but you can all see that, well, I guess that makes sense then, huh? I still rolled a 1, but as you can still tell, you can still roll, and no matter what, it still comes out with a great outcome. And the best thing about this is you can roll up to 10 dice as ones. So while I take all of my stuff out here, as I take out all of my dice, take them in here. Beautiful, right? And especially just kind of listening to that clack that's the other reason why I love these dice towers so much, is just they have such nice, like, dice clap. And it's just so beautiful. It's so aesthetically pleasing to hear. So make sure that you go check those out. We currently have about 14 still in stock, and we are wanting to kind of get some more. We're wanting to see how these are going to do at first, but we're just wanting to make sure that we fill our orders and then starting to do more customizable ones as well. Now, these dice towers, I have to give credit where credit is due. These dice towers are made by the wonderful folks at Light Performance. Now, for those of you who don't know what Light Performance is, they are an amazing clothing brand of fitness wear and kind of other gear, but also recently started by one of my good friends, David Solis, and he is gotten pretty happy with using stuff for like laser printers. So not only does he make these types of towers specifically for us and the Agents of Boo, but he also does make things like coasters and other fun things that you kind of get etched and just exciting and amazing things. So go ahead and make sure that you check them out as well. So I suppose then, with all of that out of the way, now it's time for me to kind of get into some fun. Ooh, and I'm super excited to show you all this as I get this together. But another thing that you all will have probably noticed, that with everything, we at Tales of Adventure have also been pretty busy. We have been able and have been sort of blessed to, I should say, honestly, I really should just say to have the opportunity to make third-party content. And one of the ones that has recently come out for us is, drumroll please, it is, come on, you can do it. I believe in you. You can do it. I believe in you. Sorry, y'all, give me 1 second. Perfect. So, the one that we have going now is the Otherworldly Patron, known as the Verdant. This is a this is our very own Tales of Adventure supplement designed by me, DapprWombat, and this is a Warlock archetype. It is supposed to be more of a nature/plant-based Warlock. If you think of anything, the biggest things that come to mind would be if someone is wanting to play more of a Poison Ivy type character and they themselves are not wanting to kind of go through the route of being a druid, this would be a good alternative. Not only do you have, for the samples, not only do you have an extended spell list, and you also have this very wonderful ability called the Eldritch Grove, but everything comes, and once I kind of pull up the quick preview for this, you can also very, very smallly see that it also has new Verdant Eldritch invocations, which essentially means that all you have these spells that you are able to cast, but the one awesome thing about it is that anytime you cast a spell, it works differently than how you normally would cast it. So, like, for example, let's say that you do have a Fog Cloud spell. So you cast Fog Cloud, and you have that going, which is, super awesome, something really nice. But after you cast Fog Cloud with this particular invocation, let's say, you are able to turn magically invisible for just the rest of the turn until you make an attack, saving throw, or essentially anytime you interact. Another good example is that there is an Eldritch invocation that is based off of your Eldritch Blast invocation that would, or cantrip, that would allow you to add an additional 1d4 acid or poison damage on top of your regular Eldritch Blast die. And the awesome thing about that is that, well, even though it's only a d4, that still grows in power with you, and you can cast this on your Eldritch Blast. So it's supposed to grow as your tie with the Verdant grows. So all in all, it's just kind of a really fun thing that we wanted to do. This is definitely going to be a lot more. There we go. It's definitely going to be a lot more instances where we're going to come out with more just kind of fun, zany, somewhat a little off the wall things to take care of for that. Because I don't know, it's always something so fun to just kind of do and just have these experiences and just kind of playing these characters, or rather having these classes just fundamentally a little bit different. So I know that the current ones that I'm working on, I put a release, or I put a what am I trying to say? I put a notification out and kind of like a little tie-in teaser on our social media and on our Twitter that I am actually going to be coming out with a couple of new subclasses. So these ones would be particularly the subclass for the fighter, subclass for the bard, subclass for either a paladin or a cleric. I think I'm going to kind of try my hand at the subclasses, what they're doing, what Wizards of the Coast are doing for, like, what they did for, I should say, for Strixhaven, like with Silverquill and like Witherbloom and all those other like classes that can essentially fit for either of these particular ones. So I think I'm going to try my hand at that, as well as I have gotten this really fun and interesting idea that I don't think I've ever seen a lot of people do within this space, and I kind of want to give the bard a little bit more love. So I have decided that I'm going to be making a bardic subclass, and the subclass is going to be based off of essentially soul music. So if anybody knows anything like Motown or disco or soul, it's gonna be something a little bit more like that. So it's gonna have some fun features. It's supposed to be definitely a lot more of a support class, because a bard is a support class, but it'll definitely offer a lot more offensive capabilities. I am currently kind of kicking around some ideas with it, but I'm very interested to see where this sort of thought process goes. And I guess that's always the fun thing about all of this, and especially getting new into this creation space, that this space is just something wonderful that you can just let your imagination run wild. You know, you can take an initial idea and it turns out that, oh, this idea kind of isn't what I was envisioning. And so you're like, okay, well, how do I change this? And like, how do I take these designs here with this together? So I always thought that would be fun, and at the very least kind of like something fun to be able to try. So I'm gonna try my hand in it. Once again, please make sure that you stay up to date with with our Twitter, with our Instagram, as well as our TikTok, because that will be where I'm going to be posting a lot of these major updates coming forward, especially with a lot of the new content that will be coming out. So as I pick up my phone oh so subtly, make sure it's not broken, because that would also suck so much. Nope. Everything looks perfect. Okay, perfect. My phone is not broken, so I guess without further ado, let us... How do I want to do this? I know how I want to do this. Let us get into sharing some stuff, won't we? So, I believe now you all know that the time has come, even though we've only been on here for about half an hour to so. Now it's kind of the moment that I feel like, well, I already breezed through a lot of the stuff I really want to talk about in the beginning. So now time to get in the very nitty gritty about revealing for Zara Von Johns. For those of you that don't know about the podcast, Tales of Adventure Agents of B.O.O is set in a Magitech diesel punk world where the players are secret agents tasked to hunt monsters, kill wizards, and get loot. We have an amazing cast starring Cooper Hanks, who is the Dragon Turtle-born Paladin. We have Pax Ali, who is the changeling rogue, lover of life, dealer in death, and wants to be your friend, but has no problem killing you. Then we have Roy Elam, who is playing our Elven Ranger. And last but not least, we have Zara Von Johns. He is playing he's playing something angelic, something demonic, maybe something fallen. Who knows? Who knows? He doesn't for the sure, but he is playing my version of a Warlock / Binder known as a Pactkeeper. So, for those of you that may or may not be aware, there was a supplement that came out in 3.5 5th edition, or 3.5 D&D 3.5 edition. Thank you. And it was for a class known as the Binder. The Binder's whole idea was that they were able to essentially make pacts and make deals with creatures known as vestiges. Now, vestiges, I'm a little rusty on the lore, but I'm pretty sure a vestige was almost like a patron for a warlock, but not really, or at the very least, this was before they decided to add the otherworldly patrons for warlocks, which is more of I'm pretty sure like 4th and 5th edition thing. So this was kind of my idea of taking the things that I liked about it, things that I didn't, and just seeing how well it meshed up with the warlock. I also said it on my podcast numerous times that when 5th edition came out, I was very upset of how this really cool Eldritch Blast, this ability that a warlock typically uses, was just delegated to just be a cantrip. And, being a cantrip in itself is fine, but there's so many other ways that people can just get the cantrip. And, don't get me wrong, it's a really great cantrip, but I felt as though the warlock needed something, because the warlock's whole thing is that they don't have spell slots. Their whole thing is that most 9 times out of 10, they're going to be using their Eldritch Blast as their main way of offense. And it just kind of felt like you were just stepping on somebody's toes if not only could the warlock do it, but so could the human with the magic initiate feat, so could is honestly anybody with the magic initiate feat. Mind you, you still get out at level 4, or if you're a human, you got at level 1. So that has all those other issues and everything like that. But with all of that being said, I wanted to bring this more back to the basics of how the Warlock was played in 3.5, where Eldritch Blast was more of a character ability, and you could essentially customize it with the different invocations. You had your different Eldritch Blast invocations, so like changing it to be like a cone, to a ray, to like a spear, like increasing the range, and other stuff that we kind of see with this now. So, without further ado, I am going to share my screen. And now, this, once again, as always, is the kind of like the work in progress, especially because these things aren't really set in stone. I have both things that are kind of a mix between both my homebrew as well as what is canonically available. Once again, for a lot of those who don't know, this homebrew class is essentially based off of Warlock and the Binder, but this particularly is based off a lot of inspiration. One of the big inspirations are people like Jiffy Glyphs, who made the Darker Dungeons module, Laser Llama, as well as I'm missing someone else, and I can't fully remember. But they have been a really big inspiration into how I wanted these classes to run. And as such, I took a lot of those to heart. Oh, and Advanced 5th Edition from, I believe it's the EN Press. I wanted to take some aspects of those and just kind of see how they mesh together. So again, even though this is a class in itself, it only goes up to 10 levels, and not everything from the class is fully here. I'm still kind of working on some stuff, and this is still going to be much more of an evolving thing. So therefore, it's going to be kind of a little touch and go for a moment. So with that out of the way, I am going to get to, because this stuff is usually the same, like 1d8, still has a d8, it still has your constitution, higher levels, light armor, simple weapons, charisma, and like your skill focus. Now, once again, for the skill focus for the Warblade, this was any time that you had proficiency in any of these skills, then you get to choose, for however many, you get to choose maybe like 2 or 3, and you get to add a +2 bonus to that. That might change as time goes on, but like I said, all of this is still fairly revolving. So I'm going to scroll down. Oh, come on, you can do it. There we go. So I am going to go to our first chosen ability, which is known as Outsider's Influence, Pact Magic, and Eldritch Blast. So Outsider's Influence is essentially like your otherworldly patron, and once again, at a lot of the classes now, you do get to choose your archetype at first level. The patron's influence is essentially kind of working with things like the Fiend, taking ideas of like the Fiend, the Great Old Ones, the Fae, and kind of giving them a little bit more of a cooler twist. So that is where you are going to get your first, 6th, and 9th level abilities. Now, you'll see that you only really get 3, and you're thinking to yourself, well, why is that? It's like, well, because the other big factor of your Warlock, of your Pactkeeper for this one, is how I've decided to use your Pact boons. Like most people are familiar with the 5th edition Warlock, the Pact boons. You either have like the Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Tome, Pact of the Chain, Pact of the Talisman, all those other sorts of things. But for me, I have simplified and I've kind of delegated to 3 packs, or 3 boons in this case, that I'll kind of get to later. But those are going to be for your Outsider's Influence, as well as you get spells that are unique to you. Obviously, like if you are a Archfiend, you're going to have much different spells than an Archfey. But, whether or not you can decide how that functions, that's also entirely a discussion between you and your DM. Then you have your Pact Magic. Then you have your Bread and Butter, which are going to be your cantrips. You essentially are able to get a number of listings from the traditional Warlock spell class, and 2 cantrips and then you gain additional cantrips of your choice at higher levels. So you just learn more cantrips, it's fairly standard for a typical caster. Obviously, you have like your spells known in first level. You have your spell table slot level, and so this is how high of a spell that you can cast. Other things like that, your spell modifier DC, your spell attack modifier DC, and your spell casting focus, where you can either choose an arcane focus or your pact boon for your Pactkeeper spells. So I will definitely get into those a little bit later, but that's also kind of a little fun thing of how this works. So, as you all can see, your first ability here is Eldritch Blast. And you can notice, and you can see that Eldritch Blast here, as an action, you can conjure a beam of crackling energy upon command that streaks toward a creature within range. Make a ranged spell attack against a creature within a range of 120 feet. On hit, you deal 1d10 points of force or the chosen damage type based on the outsider you choose. That's right. The reason why I wanted to make Eldritch Blast a class ability instead of a cantrip is that I knew I wanted this to be something more unique. I still wanted it to be something pretty hard hitting and powerful, but something again fairly hard and like hit to home for the Warlock to give them something special. So not only can you deal force damage, but you can also deal damage based upon which outsider you chose. And I will kind of get into those because I will also reveal, and especially for this stream, I will actually now have a chance to reveal some of the base abilities for a lot of the other archetypes. But you also see here on the outside you choose using your spellcasting modifier, which can be your charisma, intelligence, or wisdom. Now, this still might be subject to change. However, I still really like the idea of the Warlock being something really weird and really unique, where you could make the argument that no, you did in fact make your pact with how charismatic you were. You did make your pact with how intelligent or like you're deciphering. Maybe you solved a puzzle and your patron granted you this boon, or just your wisdom of how in tune and honestly how well you and your patron vibe. And you essentially use that modifier for your attack and damage roll. So instead of it just being a D10, you treat this like a normal spell and you get to add your modifier to your attack and damage rolls. At 5th level, you are able to create 2 beams, and so you can make separate attack rolls for each. So you're only able to make 2 attacks if you decide to use your Eldritch Blast at 5th level. However, the wonderful thing about this is that you can see at 8th level, whenever a creature would otherwise be immune or have resistance to your Eldritch Blast ability, you negate any resistance the creature has against the damage type selected. So let's say that you're fighting a demon and the demon has, for some whatever reason, the demon has resistance to fire damage. Let's say that you have an Archfiend and you're like, I want to shoot an Eldritch Blast of Hellfire. Well, you'd be able to do that because you could negate the resistance against that creature. So, the demon's kind of being cocky and whatnot, and you're just like, nope, fire. And they're like, oh, I still got hurt from this. There's a reason why this is at 8th level is because this is still a very powerful ability. This is powerful in the sense of like you are cutting away at your opponent's resistance. And so for me, I needed to balance this out and keep this at a way where this would be something powerful, but you would not be able to get it until later levels. So, getting on to your 2nd level abilities, you have what are called your Astra Selection and your Eldritch Invocations. So, your Astra Selection is what I was talking and referring to about for your pact boons. And this is essentially how your pact boons work a bit differently. So, the bond of your contact grows as they grant you the benefits of their power. You choose one of the following options. And so for the following options, you have the Spirit Guard Astra, the Spirit Broker's Astra, and the Spirit Caller's Astra. Now, this is where I was kind of talking about how the binder and everything like that comes into play. So, I'm going to kind of read over a bunch of these because it's just kind of a lot of stuff to cover, but it's essentially a more buffed version of the Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Chain, and Pact of the Tome. So, without further ado, I'm going to read the Spirit Guard Astra. Also known as Hexblades, this section allows you to get better weapon and armor proficiencies, and you become an expert at applying their magic through your weapon. So, this is a fun combination between the Pact of the Blade and the Hexblade. For me, I thought this was a cool idea at the beginning, but then after a while, it's just kind of like, all right, sure, this is fine, I guess. I didn't realize why they had to make them separately, because at the very least to me, it makes sense that you can't be at the very least, I haven't seen an instance where you can be a Pact of the... You can't be a Pact of the Chain Warlock and also be a Hexblade. So for me, I was like, that doesn't really make a whole lot and a whole bunch of sense. So I was like, you know what? That's fine. I'm going to change this. So you gain the following benefits for this. Number one, your patron grants you insightful, mystical insights into your martial prowess. You gain proficiency in all simple and martial weapons. So, that's something not bad. It's just kind of something okay to kind of get everything going. 2. Whenever you wear light or medium armor, you can use your spellcasting modifier instead of your dexterity when determining your AC. So, this is a big thing that I kind of pull from a lot of other classes. Because to me, I really like the idea of your magic. And again, it's tying back to the idea that your magic from your patron is giving you these powers. So instead of it being something of your own volition, it is the gift of your patron. So that's why I wanted to have it where, especially if it was medium or light armor, you could use your spell casting modifier instead of dexterity. That way I wanted to kind of get a little bit away from dexterity and be like, no, if I wanted to have a high spell casting and also maybe like a high constitution for something like this, I could. And especially of how upfront ability score increases are going to be and how rare they are going to be in the early, mid/late game. I'll kind of get into that in a later episode. That's going to be good. That you're going to need that, and it's going to be something because it also builds again with your spell casting. So if your spell casting modifier increases, your AC increases. Is a long-winded way of me saying this. But here is where things kind of get fun, and this is where I kind of got the idea from the Hexblade Warlock. So, you can conjure a magical weapon as a bonus action. This weapon is a melee weapon that deals damage of your choice upon conjuring of bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage equal to your Eldritch Blast die. So, you can see up here your Eldritch Blast die here, boop, is a D10. Now, I, more than anything, will probably change this in the future. I do like this idea, but I also think that having a dagger deal 1d10 damage can get pretty crazy pretty fast. So I think I'm going to change where your Eldritch Blast essentially grows with you. So maybe it starts as a 1d6, you get it up to a d8, d10, d12, maybe something like that. By the time you hit 10th level, you can deal a d12. But for the time being, I'm going to fix this in a later video. But the other cool thing about this is that this also, for me, pulling a little bit from the Soul Blade prestige class I remember from 3.5, where you could I'm pretty sure it was either the Soul Blade or the Soul Knife, where you could essentially create a dagger, create a short sword or long sword, or create a great sword out of just harvesting out of coalescing and concentrating this energy into reality. And this is almost essentially what you're able to do. And then this has a 5-foot reach, so you can attack it as normal, and you can throw it up to 15 to 30 feet. So it's something that you can also chuck because it's light, because it's technically a weapon made out of pure energy. However, you can also conjure a new weapon and it'll make the other one disappear. And you can actually enhance your weapon with one of the following choices. So when you conjure a weapon, you can either make it, give it the Halberdier tag, which you granted reach, cavalry, and two-handed. So reach means that you're able to hit a foe from an extra 5 feet away. Cavalry means that you have advantage on creatures that are on horseback. And two-handed means that you're able to just hold it two-handedly. Dualistic, your weapon gains the light and the finesse properties. In addition, you can wield a copy in your other hand. You deal copy in your other hand, and you deal 1d6 damage instead, but you can make an extra attack as a bonus action. So for this one, this is more like slicing and dicing. This is more of like the two-handed warlock, or like the two-handed badass that kind of wants to go through. Then, other fun stuff You have your Aegis, which is essentially you summon your weapon as a shield. And the shield itself does 1d6 damage, but you gain a +2 bonus to your AC. Because you can notice here how in your weapons and your armor, you only get proficiency with light armor and simple weapons. And for your, even up here, you can notice that you only gain proficiency in simple and martial weapons. So this was supposed to be a fun way for you to get some sort of bonus where you're like, no, I could also be a essentially warlock that also fights with my shield. So you could potentially play a Hexblade style Captain America, depending on which patron you choose, which I'll get, or Otherworldly Outsider, which I'll get into in a second. Then you have Hexslinger. This is essentially taken from the Arcane Gunslinger Eldritch Invocation, where you can create a weapon that is a sidearm that you are proficient in. The range is 30 to 150 feet, and the ammo capacity is 6. So that means you get 6 shots before you have to essentially conjure another weapon of that. There's no such thing as reloading. This is purely magical. This is a construct, so you would need to dismiss and summon it again. But again, once you do summon it, you can only really, you summon it as like a free action, as a bonus action. So if you run out, after doing your 6 shots, your 6 attacks, that would be something that you would have to keep in mind. And then far-reaching. Once thrown, as a bonus action, you return the weapon to your hand, and the throwing range of that weapon is now doubled. So going back to the original for the throw-in weapon here, the properties for it being thrown is 15 to 30 feet. So this essentially means that you can throw it from 30 to 60. So, from 30 to 60 feet. So this is something, again, where it's like, I want to be able to just, conjure something I can just chuck at somebody. And it deals the damage, and you're able to kind of do this, and you can have it returned to your hand and just kind of keep chucking it. Next one, you have this. While you are proficient and while you wield your packed weapon, you can use it as a spellcasting focus for your warlock spells. And when you do, this weapon counts as magical for the purposes of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks and damage. In addition, when you attack with this weapon, you can use your spellcasting ability modifier instead of your strength or dexterity for the attack and damage rolls. Again, I wanted to reiterate the point that it is not under your power that you are able to wield this weapon. You are under the will and the direct order of your patron. And as such, it is your patron that dictates your power with all of this. But the other really cool thing that you get is you also get something called Eldritch Strength. So, Eldritch Strength, when you choose to expend a hit die to conjure your packed weapon, as a free action or to enhance a weapon you are already wielding, doing so grants you a bonus to your AC, attack, and damage rolls you make with your weapon enhanced by your Eldritch Strength, equal to the number of hit die spent, up to a maximum of 2 until the end of your next turn. When this ability is used, your Eldritch Strength resets back to 0. So, what this essentially means is that Eldritch Strength allows you to deepen your bond with your patron for a little while, and you essentially grant them a bit of your life and a bit for extra power. Because again, you are not under your own power. Your patron owns you with all of this. So that's why it's only you can expend a hit die up to a maximum of 2 to increase your AC, your attack, and damage rolls. Because that's already what you're going to be doing, and this is more of an enhanced get-out-of-jail-free card. But when you use this ability, your Eldritch Strength resets back to 0, which means that you will not be able to use this until you finish a long rest. So this is really potent, but make sure that you keep that in your back pocket the next time you need something as a Hail Mary. Then you have some other fun stuff that you're able to get at 5th and 9th level. At 5th level, your understanding of the prowess has deepened. You can attack twice instead of once when you take the attack action on your turn, and you learn one fighting style of your option from the Warblade class. Now, you only take the base fighting style. You don't take the advanced fighting style. If you already have a style, then you can choose. Then the one you choose must be different. So this is essentially something else that helps make you into more of a fighter character, where you're like, no, I can take this fighting style here. So you could essentially use your Hex Slinger and maybe take the archery fighting style, or you decide, no, I'm going to do Aegis, but I'm also going to take the the unarmed fighting. So you just flavor your shield now as like shielded gauntlets that you can just use and like fight in battle. Then at 9th level, you gain the ability to place a baleful enemy on a baleful curse on an enemy. As a bonus action, choose one target that you can see within 30 feet of you. That target is cursed for 1 minute, and until the curse ends, you gain the following benefits. You gain a bonus to your damage rolls against that creature, and it's equal to your level divided by 2, your Warlock level divided by 2, so round down. So at 5th level, that is 5, which is absolutely insane. And then any attack roll you make against this cursed creature, a critical hit is on a roll or a 19 or 20 on the d20, which again is absolutely insane. And when you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. So this is still pretty powerful. And at the very least, to me, it made sense for it to be so powerful, especially because this is what you're getting at 9th level. Like, this is your capstone level. So you're supposed to get something pretty awesome to go with it. Next up is we have our Spirit Brokers, Astra. So these are more of the Pact of the... So these are more Pact of the Tome, and they deal more with spells and magic and just kind of learning the hidden knowledge of other classes and just magic as a whole. So, better known as Sycophantics, these contractors learn mastery over magic and are adept at refining their outsider's power to its full potential. Your patron gives you a grimoire called an Ars Goetia. When you gain this feature, you can choose 3 cantrips from any class spell list, and while this book is on your person, you can cast those cantrips at will. They are considered a Pact-Binder spell for you, which I gotta change, it's a Pactkeeper, and they needn't be from the same spell list. They also don't count against the spell number of cantrips you know. If you lose your Goetia, you can perform a 1-hour ceremony to receive a replacement from your patron. This ceremony can be performed during a short or long rest, and it destroys the previous book. The book turns to ash when you die, and when you make an attack with your Eldritch Blast, the damage you roll increases to 1d10. So, this is, once again, one of the things that is going to be changing, is that I am going to set this as a base and just changing how your Eldritch Blast, because again, this is more about you channeling your spells. This is about you being more in tune with your magic. So of course, to me, I feel as though your Eldritch Blast is supposed to be much more powerful. Then you get into your fun little other thing called Eldritch Empowerment. Now that you have the means of storing your outsider's power for future use, when you expend a spell slot to cast a spell, you can sacrifice a number of hit die, increasing your Eldritch favor by the difference. The next time you cast a spell of level 1 or higher that's not larger than that favor, you can cast that spell without expending a spell slot equal to the number of points of Eldritch favor you have. After that spell is cast, your favor resets to 0. So you're kind of seeing a little bit of a pattern here, right? Like you have your Eldritch Empowerment, you have your Eldritch Strength, and they all reset back to 0. Well, what does that mean? Well, again, when you expend a spell slot, you can sacrifice a number of those hit die, increasing the favor by that difference. So, like, let's say taking that example again with the Spirit Guard and with the Hexblade, you can expend a number of hit die up to a maximum of 2 to increase hitting better, being better offensively, defensively, and stuff like this. This essentially means that if you sacrifice a number of your hit die and you increase your Eldritch favor, the next time that you cast that spell, let's say if it's like a level 1, you're like, or it's a level 2, and you're like, oh man, I already am running out of spell slots. I already don't have that many spell slots. This is basically just be like, oh yeah, no, you can just spend your point of favor, and you don't have to worry about expending that spell slot. So let's say if you're still struggling with like a level 1, you can just be like, no, I'm going to use 1 point of my Eldritch favor, and I'm just going to cast that first level spell without having to expend a spell slot. Now, mind you, again, you can only really use that one more time until your favor resets to 0, and you have to do the whole process again. But it's something fun to think about for that. Then, for your 5th level, you have inscribed a great deal of lore into your Ars Goetia. You learn another Eldritch invocation, ignoring any prerequisites besides the level, and I'll get into those in a minute. This does not count against the number of Eldritch invocations you know, nor does it count as an Eldritch invocation of a certain level if it has a level requirement. You can replace this invocation by replacing a Worn Hour ritual with your Book of Shadows or your Ars Goetia, and you can lose this invocation if you lose your Book of Shadows or your Ars Goetia. Additionally, when you cast a damaging cantrip, you can add your damage modifier to the you can add your intelligence modifier to the damage it deals on hit. So this one is definitely more towards intelligence, because this is the idea of you picking your brain and you being so in tune with the magical theory that your patron has bestowed upon you. That's why instead of, and I'll have to change this again in the final print, but this is why I was dead set on calling this an Ars Goetia, the Ars Goetia, instead of it being called a Book of Shadows. Because the Ars Goetia from the 72 Lesser Keys of Solomon was about contacting daemons. And contacting daemons and demons are technically different, as these daemons you could call upon and gain information and knowledge. These were ones that you call upon for like astronomy, medicine, history, warfare, and they are supposed to know these because they are closer esoterically. They are on the ether, and so thus they are closer to the divine and, just kind of the rest of the supreme consciousness. So again, that's why I really wanted to emphasize, this is you expanding your mind and ascending into that higher realm of thinking, that higher realm of consciousness. So that's a long-winded way of being like, that's a really cool reason why you get your you add your intelligence modifier. Then at 9th level, you have unearthed many secrets of the arcane. For this one, you learn 1 spell of 5th level or lower of your choice from the wizard or the arcanist spell. This spell counts as a warlock spell and does not count against the number of spells you know. While the book is on your person, you cast this without expending a spell slot, and then you have to finish a long rest. Additionally, your book is no longer destroyed when you die, and it can be used in place of a corpse to restore your life. So, this is also a really, really cool idea that I thought flavor-wise, again, made sense, because you are powering and you are putting so much of your very nature, of your very force into this book that it would make sense that a part, or maybe like 80% of your soul, went within this as well. So let's say that if you did get, let's see if you did get hit by a lich's ray of, like a ray of annihilation and you died. Right? Like, that means that your book is still there and they don't need your body. They just need your book. So essentially, since your book is no longer destroyed when you die and you can use it as a corpse, you just essentially are able to almost become a weird mix of a lich in itself, because your Ars Goetia almost becomes like a pseudo phylactery for you. But again, once you use this feature, you must finish a long rest before you can use it again. So, lastly, for the last pact boon we have is what I was talking about for the Binder 3.5 class. That's a good one. So, this is known as the Spirit Caller's Astra. Better known as binders, you can perform a ritual over the course of an hour to summon a manifestation of your patron's contract. You learn the Find Familiar spell and can cast it as a ritual without expending material components. This spell doesn't count against the number of spells you know, and when you cast a spell, you can choose one of the following special forms: Imp, Pseudo-Dragon, Quasit, or Sprite. Additionally, you can communicate telepathically with your familiar and perceive through your familiar senses as long as you are on the same plane of existence. While you're perceiving through your familiar senses, you can speak through your familiar in your own voice, even if your familiar is normally incapable of speech. So this is a cool, like, ventriloquist sort of thing that I really loved, because again, to me, it made sense that you are basically becoming friends and becoming very in tune with this little creature that you have summoned as your contract dictates. So it makes sense for you to be like, no, I can see what you see, I can throw my senses into you, but also I can like speak with you in my head, and I can also throw my voice and have you talk in my voice to kind of give a little bit of more thematic flair. And you also have something awesome called Otherworldly Senses. I'm going to put a clause in here that'll say while your familiar is active, you will gain advantage on wisdom and intelligence checks. So this is essentially you looking with two pairs of eyes, so to speak. So this is supposed to keep you like out of danger, and this is also in case you are like looking for something, or in case this was going to be more of like a mystery, making those investigation checks for finding lost passages, finding hidden doors, and maybe alerting yourselves to danger and stuff like that. Then you have your other ability, which is called Eldritch Companion. Whenever you cast a cantrip or spell, you can expand a number of hit die up to a maximum of 3 to have your familiar cast an identical copy of the spell as your bonus action. This echoed spell deals half damage, and all targets have advantage on any saving throws the spell mate possesses, including subsequent saving throws. If the target would already have advantage, they instead get to roll an additional 1d6 and add the result to the saving throw. Spells that have a hit point threshold may not be echoed, and if the spell requires concentration, your familiar may concentrate on the spell as its bonus action, but may perform no other action besides movement. Spells cast by the familiar do not expend your spell slot. So this is another cool idea where you're using your familiar to be an extension upon yourself. So even though this is like an echo, like a identical copy of the spell, and everybody had like it deals half damage and targets have advantage, that's still something you'd be like, oh yeah, my familiar is like 30 feet that way. Oh, we need to hit this guy. I know the lightning bolt spell, so bam, I just shoot him with a lightning bolt. That is just something fun that you could do with that, as well as if a spell requires a concentration, your familiar can concentrate on its bonus action. Meaning that if it's a spell that you wanted to echo that's a concentration, your familiar is the one who concentrates on it, not you. That still doesn't mean that you can cast 2 concentration spells at the same time, but that also just kind of frees you up to do other stuff. So just keep that in mind. Then you have at 5th level, okay, cool. So for this one, this is what I will place up there. But for 5th level, lastly, you can infuse your patron's power into the strikes of your minions. The attacks of any creature you summon or raise count as magical for the purposes of overcoming resistance or immunity to non-magical damage. So this is supposed to be a little bit more of a flavor, right? Like if you're using and I'll get to the familiar spirits that you can summon depending on your archetype, because that'll come into play a lot more. But that will go into kind of that idea where you can still use them to fight for you, and they now can deal damage that counts as magic. Then at 9th level, the spirit of your familiar follows you at all times when it lacks a physical form. It can hide in your shadow and is unseen by anyone who doesn't have true sight. As a bonus action, you can command your familiar spirit to slip into the shadow of a creature that you can see within 60 feet. While it's merged in this matter, the target can't gain any benefits of half or 3/4 cover against your attack rolls, and the direction and You know the distance and the direction to the target, even if it's hidden. The target always has a vague feeling of dread while the familiar spirit is present. You can use your bonus action to command your spirit to return to you and its effect on the target. The effect spirit automatically ends if you or your target are on different planes of existence. If you are incapacitated, or if a spell such as Dispel Magic or Remove Curse is used on the target, or if you cast Find Familiar. So this is just another fun thing where you're just like, I can track you. And the reason why I can track you is because I have this little buddy who's essentially my long extension arm. And this is just kind of the fun thing where like, no, like this creature doesn't gain any benefits from cover. You already know like the distance and where it is. So this is almost like a locate object or something akin to like a hunter's mark that you get at 9th level. So those are for those. How are we looking with everything? I just want to see really quickly. How's everything looking? Okay, everything is looking good. Everything's looking good. All right. So, going back into it. Go ahead and share my screen one more time. Perfect. So, I will not get into the Eldritch Invocations because there are way too many of them to count. But essentially how this now works is you get a certain number of spells, but you also have each invocation that requires a level requirement. And at the beginning, you get to choose 3 Eldritch Invocations, which are detailed up to a maximum of 7 at 10th level. You have your lesser invocations that come in the form of modifying your Eldritch Blast and spells, greater, and so on and so forth. So your lesser is 1st level and up to 2nd level. Your lesser, I gotta change some of this stuff because I repeated some stuff, so apologies. Once again, this is kind of the whole reason why you have stuff like this that is supposed to change. But additionally, when you gain a level in this class, you can choose one of the invocations you know and replace it. Eldritch Blast invocations that alter how your Eldritch Blast behave, and you can only have one type of invocation effect given in Eldritch Blast, which again we'll kind of get into later. 3rd level, Patron's Wrath. Whenever you subject a creature to an otherworldly patron ability or spell that otherwise deals no damage, you can use your reaction to spend a hit die to deal an additional amount of damage equal to 2 per Pactkeeper levels up to a maximum of 48 at 8th level. This extra damage is chosen from your otherworldly patron, and the damage may be halved with a successful Wisdom saving throw against the Pactkeeper spell save DC. So, this is essentially the idea of performing a Hellish Rebuke, but for your patron, right? Because your patron sees you not necessarily as a pawn in their scheme or in their game, but as a long-term investment. And so this is kind of the idea of it being a fail-safe for their investment. Hence why you're able to do 1d8 per 2 Pactkeeper levels. So that's why you're able to do a maximum of 48 at 8. Because it's the more powerful you are, the more of an investment that you become for your patron. Then you have your character improvement, which again, I'll kind of get into at a later time, or you can listen to the podcast when the episodes for those come up. But then you also have your Seed of Power and your Pact Boon. So your Pact Boon is essentially anything else for that. Your Seed of Power is essentially whenever you cast a cantrip that deals damage, you either add your Charisma or Intelligence modifier to the damage it deals on a hit. And when you reach 10th level, you can add it to the damage of your spells using your Pact Magic feature. So again, this is just you under your patron's power of becoming more and more powerful and channeling that. Obviously, this would be for your spellcasting modifiers to your damage on hit, so I have to go back and change this. But you can tell that I've been pretty busy with a lot of stuff. So, 6th level is your Otherworldly Patron ability. 7th level is when you get your another Pact Boon and your Patron's Fury. So, Patron's Fury, once per long rest, when the Warlock may expend a spell slot on one of your hit die to deal 2d6 per the spell level or hit die against a chosen target. This, again, is kind of that, like, I'm out of spell slots, what do? you can and just kind of chuck a Hail Mary of like patron magic at somebody. Think of it almost the equivalency of throwing magical pocket sand at someone. It's kind of a little bit more of a, Hail Mary, so to speak. So the damage is chosen as selected by your patron. The Constitution save against the spell save DC causes to deal half damage. Creatures that are immune to this are instead restrained and blinded until the Warlock's next turn, and a successful save. And so, if the creature is immune to, let's say if you use it for fire damage, if the creature is immune, well, that's fine because they're instead restrained and blinded. So this, again, is the idea of you throwing some sort of distraction or your patron being like, no, don't you kill my investment. I still need this. Then you have your other character improvement at 8th level. At 9th level, you have your Occultic Communion and your last pack boon. So your Occultic Communion, even a prayer of yours is often heard and answered. Whenever you finish a short rest, you may choose 2 of your known spells, 4th or lower, and you gain the ability to cast these spells without finishing a long rest. So, this is supposed to be something that's really powerful because you are able to just essentially be like, hey, I need these 4th level spells. Can I cast these 4th level spells again? And your patron's just like, boom, nah, it's done, man. You got this. And you can just use these without regaining all of your spells on a long rest. Because again, the whole idea of the patron, the whole idea of the Pactkeeper is that this is not a power of your own. I know I keep saying it like a broken record, but it's very true, and I really wanted to emphasize this, that you are not in control of your own power. Your patron sees you as a viable investment for whatever they decide to do upon this world. Then you have your Outsider's Influence. Then you have your Invocation listings, so you have your Eldritch Spear and other stuff that'll essentially give you better, or rather give you other spells that you'll be able to cast. I'm trying to debate whether or not for some of these I want to add in like clauses where it's like, oh, well, if you cast this spell using this manner, you also get something really cool happen. But I think I'm going to save those more for your archetype, because at the very least to me that makes the most sense. So these are going to be still fairly basic. Like you can cast Bane spell, Arms of Hadar, Greater Invocations. These have your Eldritch Blast and everything like that. So like for this one, Melter of Minds, when you hit a creature with Eldritch Blast, can't take reactions. When Eldritch Blast has disadvantage on the attack roll. Touch of Corruption, and so all these other fun things that you can do with that. Then you have your Master ones, which is essentially like getting like your super hard hitting invocations. Like this one, whenever you cast it, it takes the form of a 60-foot long and 5-foot wide line, and when you make this attack against any creature of your choice within that area, so you're basically just like, no, this turns into an Eldritch Laser, essentially. Chain of the Chitin, whenever you roll an Eldritch Blast, one creature of your choice from the original. On failed save, it also is get hit. On a success, it takes no damage. So this is you being able to chain your Eldritch Blast to hit someone else. And kind of going in with a lot of all of these other here. So, with all of that being said, now we're actually going to get into, and I think I'm actually going to, I'm going to change this here. But I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to show off the one in particular, the for Zera Von Johns, and his particular pact known as the Archfiend. Now, the Archfiend works somewhat similarly as the Fiend, where you have a couple of really cool ideas and everything like that. But there are some things that also have some really awesome surprises. Case in point, you probably see that thing that says Eldritch Blast type Inferno, and we'll get to that in a second. So your expanded list, you have Command. So it's first level, you can cast Command and Burning Hands. Second level spell, Flame Spear and Suggestion. Third level, Fireball, Summon Lesser Demon. 4th level, Banishment and Fire Shield. 5th level, Flame Strike and Infernal Calm. So these are still very typical. These are about like burning and blood. Like burning and fire and yada yada yada. All good stuff like that. But you can see here that you have something called Eldritch Blast type Inferno. So your Eldritch Blast blazes with the energy of the lower planes. When you score a critical hit with your Eldritch Blast, tendrils of flame rise above the ground and pull your target down with it, causing the creature to fall prone. The creature's speed is also reduced until the start of your next turn. Additionally, you can have your Eldritch Blast deal either fire or necrotic damage instead of force. So this was one of the fun ideas and the ways I wanted to customize your archetype, because I wanted to make it something unique that if you are selected by this patron, only you or those who are selected by this patron can do. Case in point, when you score a critical hit with your Eldritch Blast, you essentially knock this creature prone and its speed is reduced until the end of its next turn, because it's the idea that these tendrils grab it and just pull it into the ground. It's not restrained. It only just means that its speed is reduced, so it can't really do much anything except for maybe attack. But also, again, this means for your Inferno, your Eldritch Blast can now either deal fire, necrotic, or force damage. So that gives you a lot of fun tools to play with, and that ties back into your Eldritch Blast and like your pack boons and everything like that. So Burning Blood is essentially you casting Hellish Rebuke. You can cast a spell as a Warlock spell slot, but you don't exactly use one. However, you also deal an additional number of points of damage equal to 2 rolls of your Eldritch Blast die. So this is essentially you getting attacked and being like, how dare you? This is definitely the one that is most volatile and most reactive, because again, to me, it makes sense because you're dealing with an Archfiend. They will do anything viciously in order to protect their investments. At 6th level, you get your Dark One's own luck. So whenever you finish a long rest, you roll 2d. So for this one, I actually kind of changed how this worked, because I really like this idea from the divination wizard, and it's almost taking it to the idea, that your patron essentially cheats at the game. So whenever you finish a long rest, you roll 2d20 and record the number rolled. You can then replace any attack roll, saving throw, or ability check made by you or a creature that you can see with one of the rolls. You must choose to do so before the roll, and you can replace the roll in this way once per turn. You can do so after seeing the initial roll, but before any of the roll's effects occur. And you can use this feature twice in regaining all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So, again, if anybody is familiar with the 5th edition Wizard Divination, you get to roll a bunch of d20 and you get to roll 4 d20, record the results for those. Anytime somebody makes a d20 for an ability attack or saving throw, you can instead swap out their roll with yours, with your portent. So this is essentially that idea, but you only have 2 of them. It's, again, supposed to be the idea of the 2 of them, that, like, your Archfiend is stacking the game, and thematically, too, because it's the devil rolling the dice, or the devil's dice. Again, tying back into the consideration of, like, your patron cheating at whatever it is necessary in order for you to survive. Next up, you have your 10th level Capstone ability, which functions pretty much the same as your other abilities. You have Hurl Through Hell. So when you hit a creature, you can use this feature instantly, and you transport them to the lower planes. Essentially, you just send them into a nightmare. On the end of your next turn, the target returns, and if it's not a fiend, so this means that if it's not considered a fiend or a fiend-like creature, it takes 5d10 psychic damage, and it reels from the horrific experience. So when you use this, you can't finish until long rest. So it's essentially the idea of the same Hurl Through Hell pact idea for the traditional 5th edition Warlock. Then for these, you also learn these other invocations. So you have Agonizing Blast, which means when you cast Eldritch Blast, you double your spellcasting modifier to the damage it hit on hit. So this is very good for anybody, because again, it's the whole idea of the Archfiend is for attacks and debuff and staying offensive and being aggressive. Fiery Tongue, you gain proficiency, intimidation, and persuasion skills. Again, kind of like that whole devil's influence. Then you have Bewitching Whispers, where you can cast Compulsion once per Warlock spell slot. You can't do so again until you finish a long rest. So this is essentially like the devil whispering in your ear, the devil making me do it. Next up, you have something fun for the Spirit Caller, and what I was kind of talking about at the beginning, known as your Spirit Caller's Familiar. This takes a lot of inspiration again from the minor spirits, besides the vestiges that you would get for the binder for 3.5. And I wanted to kind of take that idea, but almost make the binder kind of like I don't want to say like a Pokemon trainer, but the idea that you can summon this familiar to fight for you. And you also get really cool abilities that go with it. So for this case, your Pactkeeper, your familiar, is a Hellhound. You essentially use the stats for a direwolf, but with the added abilities. Essentially, Hellhounds are minor hunting spirits used by devils and demons to track down those who escape from a deal with such things. They manifest as a four-legged dog-like creature that is seen to breathe fire. And while active, you gain these following abilities. That's right. That's why being a binder is also kind of cool, because you gain some really cool stuff. So you can cast the Guidance cantrip as well, which means that you can add a d4 to either your ability check or saving throw. Next off, because the Hellhound is able to breathe fire, you can cast the Burning Hand spells with your Hellhound as the point of origin. And when you use this ability, you got to take a short or long rest before you do so again. So again, like if your Hellhound is 60 feet up, you can tell it to breathe fire, and it just, as a good Hellhound should. Then, lastly, as a bonus action on your turn, you can move your Hellhound up to 30 feet and have it attempt to bite a creature within 5 feet of it. The bite is a melee spell attack, and it deals 1d6 piercing and 1d6 fire damage. So in total, it deals 2d6, which is about the equivalency of like a swing of someone's greatsword. Which again is supposed to make sense, because this thing is supposed to hurt a lot. And your Hellhound cannot move further than 60 feet away from you at any time. So again, this is something that kind of gets into having those limitations. And you'll definitely see as it kind of goes along, and as I reveal more and more, that your familiars cannot move within a certain limit from you. It's kind of the idea of like they are still tethered to you, and they are still an extension, but that extension can only reach so far. I think I may change this, that cannot move further than you than 30 feet plus maybe 5 times your proficiency bonus. Only the idea that only to emphasize the idea that as your power grows as a Pactkeeper, so does your influence and your reach of this. But that is something I've been kind of wanting to figure out and change with. So, I suppose with all of that out of the way, well, I guess I'm glad to know that didn't take as long as I thought it was going to be, or at the very least, I hope I didn't bore you all with my conversations with everything like that. So, once again, my name is KingDapprWombat. This has been such a great pleasure, and I have another announcement. For those of you that are still very much interested, I will be today, September 20th of 2022, I will be playing in a one-shot hosted by Chaotic Wonderful. We are going to be playing a one-shot in Monsters of the Week. So you can come see me play the monster hunting equivalent of Columbo, as occultic fantasy seems to be kind of my shtick, my bread and butter with all of this. As well as I will be having another live stream just like this Thursday, let me make sure this is correct. I have my dates together. Thursday, September 22nd, again from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Central Time, where I will be going over, and this will probably be another shorter one, where I will be going over the changes and the awesome, the changes and the creation of the class that I did for Pax Ali, otherwise known as the Lovable Rogue, for my revised version, simply known as the Specialist. Until next time, my name has been DapperWombat. If you all loved what you heard here, you can always follow us on our Twitter, on our Instagram of @agents_of_boo. You can always follow me personally on my Twitter of @KingDapprWombat. That is KingDapprWombat, as well as my personal Instagram of @CorradoVermil. Lastly, you can also follow us on our TikTok @Tales of Adventure, as well as you can find us here on our YouTube channel and on our Twitch, and we will be having essentially going with updates fairly soon. With all that being said, I think that'll wrap us up for today. So, wanted to say once again, thank you so much for everybody who was able to jump on the stream. Again, doing stuff like this just really means a whole lot to me. And with all that being said, I will see you all Thursday. So, have a good night.